Welcome back. Jim McKelvey, the co-founder of Square and LaunchCode, and a newly minted Miami local. He's joined by Derek Thompson to unpack the power of creative pairs. But first, this video.
For a long time. As a result, I have found it hard to find employment. I've gone to 285 interviews since I started having major problems. Almost every single one of the interviews, I made it all the way through the interview and made it to the point where they were asking for my IDs. And so I mentioned I have narcolepsy, and suddenly driving is a requirement for the job, and it gets shut down. And I've encountered that over and over and over again. I want to be graded on my programming skills, not on the fact that I have this or the fact that these are issues. And I feel like that is something that's happened here.
I would say, his experience may be atypical. So he's got, he's been in a number of positions, prior military. He does have disability. So being here, he's been enthusiastic, great part of the team. Apollo, everybody likes Apollo as part of the team as well.
The most common symptom is excessive daytime sleepiness, which is basically you fall asleep at random. What Apollo does for me is he'll nip at my fingers and wake me up if there's an issue. If I'm attempting to cross the street and I pass out, he will pull me across the street. But everybody's been very accommodating. It's been a very, very relaxed environment. I was basically surviving, for lack of a better way to put it, on the government dime. I was collecting VA disability and Social Security disability, and I'm a former Marine. I am a person who believes in doing things yourself as much as you possibly can. I've had a bunch of little incidents that in and of themselves wouldn't be a big deal, but what it was showing me was things I couldn't do. For the first time in about 10 years, I will be making enough money that I can support myself. For a person with a disability, that's really, in my opinion, that's what we want more than anything else. And LaunchCode gave that to me.
Jim, thanks. That's a moving video, and I think it makes a really good point that when we talk about tech, we often talk about the product of tech and not the input, which is people.
The producers.
The producers,
yes.
Right, exactly. And this is a good reminder. Before we get to the hard questions, can you tell people in the audience who don't know what is LaunchCode and why Miami?
So LaunchCode is a way of solving the tech talent shortage. So every company these days is a tech company, and what we found in my hometown of St. Louis, which was that the job market had locked up because companies were only hiring people that had experience. And if you only hire people with experience, then nobody gets new experience. And so what started as an experiment was to see if I could change the culture in St. Louis, Missouri. And I contacted all the companies and I said, if I give you somebody who I vouch for, like personally, as qualified, will you take them and give them a try? And so I got yeses from all the companies, and it worked surprisingly well. We've placed over 150 people now, and these are people who would not be in the ecosystem right now. This is a total net new for what is this tech talent gap that we're all facing. So we were then partnered up with Harvard to do education, because a lot of people who came to us for these jobs didn't have quite the skills, and so Harvard has this wonderful class through edX, which is a competitor to Coursera. And they will give you this free Harvard education. You don't get the Harvard diploma, but you get the education. And so we were running people through that. And it worked very well, and Harvard said, bring it nationwide. And so I had a place here in Miami. I knew the Knight Foundation, and I had one meeting with this guy. So Matt Hagman, this is remarkable. The ability to get things done quickly is so important to entrepreneurship. And LaunchCode didn't do a fundraising campaign here. I had breakfast with Matt. I explained what we did. He asked me 3 hours of questions, because he's a reporter and he does that very well. And then there was a quick vetting progress, and long story short, we are here because the Knight Foundation basically made it possible.
One of the interesting things about,
that's what we're doing.
About the tech shortage, the skills shortage, is that there isn't a skill shortage of people who want to be musicians. There's not a skill shortage of people who want to be basketball players and baseball players. And the reason is that these things are fun. And
yes.
Tech isn't that fun. It doesn't seem like coding is that fun, at least to me.
So
and
that's
this
a
is
totally fair question, and you know, that is true. But it's true in sort of this binary way. You're either absolutely right or absolutely wrong. Okay. So in your case, I'm sure you're absolutely right. In my case, you're absolutely wrong, because I am a guy who will forget how I'm dressing and sit down and hammer away on the computer. It's embarrassing to admit publicly, but it's fun. And there's certain people who love this stuff. And you probably all know some of them. And what I would challenge you to do is find the people who you think might have fun doing this and hook them up with launch code. Because we can get them real time.
How would you even know?
So you know, so they're musicians, or they like puzzles or games, or they're really annoying about details, right? There's certain qualities that make for good programmers. And if you happen to naturally have these good qualities, then you could be in an entirely new career.
An OCD oboe player, just perfect sweet spot. Okay.
Have at it.
All right.
Have at it. Better, you know, yeah.
What you're doing is, on the one hand, amazing, and on the other hand, it's not in conflict with each other, but obvious.
Obvious, yes.
I mean, the concept of apprenticeships isn't something you invented. It isn't something Germany invented. It's been going on for thousands of years. So in order for you to be successful, it seems to me that only one of two things can be true. The first thing that's true is that this thing was obvious and nobody realized it was obvious and didn't even try it. The second thing that's true is that people did try it, but they did it really poorly, and so you came in and you just totally reinvented the system. Which of those two is true, and how did you turn this obvious idea into a success so quickly?
So I don't think those two questions necessarily contradict each other. I think, first of all, I do stuff that's obvious to me because I don't think very big thoughts. I think very simple thoughts. So Square seemed obvious, you know, and launch code. The complexity about launch code is that there are actually two problems in the economy, right? So if you figure the invisible hand of the market is supposed to bid up the price of programmer salaries, and then the supply is supposed to up to make the market clear.
The skill shortage shouldn't happen.
Yeah, so it shouldn't exist. But what happens is that there's a break on both sides, and Steve Clemens actually mentioned it earlier. On the supply side, people who want these jobs and say, okay, I'm going to get one of these jobs, they do what they should obviously do. They look at the educational alternatives. They say, oh, I'm going to go to a 4-year accredited institution. In my hometown, the number is 7 colleges that teach these things. 2 of them are good, 5 of them suck. What are your odds? And you can't tell going in because they all have great brochures. So a lot of people that we've seen coming to Launch Code have actually been, you know, diverted into one of these educational dead ends. And then they get discouraged, and then they got all this debt, and then, you know, so that's break one. That's on the supply side, okay? And then you've got a demand side problem. The demand side problem is this. Employers are justly afraid of new programmers because a new programmer can do damage. A new programmer can come in, write a query, screw up a database, and set your organization back. So employers are rational, and employers say, okay, then we're only going to hire people with experience to protect ourselves from this potential problem. And because they're doing that, they then lock up the job market by only hiring people that are experienced.
Right, so you have, the wages are bid up for a finite group of people who already have a job, and
Yes.
they get new jobs,
Yes.
and then you have San Francisco.
Yes.
Okay, so it sounds to me like a point that you're making that you might not even be trying to make is that there's something broken in our education system, not just in the macroeconomy. That if you have more and more people going to school, we had an increase in education attainment over the last 6 years, starting with the recession, you shouldn't have a skill shortage at a period in American history with the greatest education attainment ever. So implicit in your argument, is there an idea that there's something about the BA classic 4-year system that isn't training people properly for the jobs that actually exist when they get the sheepskin and they leave campus?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't look at the Bachelor of Arts or any sort of post-secondary education as some sort of job training program. So I don't think the purpose of college is to prepare you for a job so much as prepare you for life and, let you experiment.
But you have to work to live.
Other
So
stuff.
to a certain extent, it has to be.
Right. So, but yes, there is part of that, right? So the problem is some people seek jobs through the educational system and get screwed. And one of the things that's unique about programming, and I'm only sort of focused on programming right now, is that it's pretty simple to learn on your own. And when I say simple, I use the analogy of if your server breaks and a guy shows up who's 18 years old in a dirty t-shirt says, I can fix this, I've been studying in my basement, don't worry about it, you're probably okay with that. But if you have like a chest pain and the guy says, oh, I've been watching YouTube videos,
Slightly higher stakes.
scalpel,
Yeah.
so we, not to sort of denigrate programming as a profession, but the entry point is fairly low, and then once you are there and practicing, your skills accumulate very quickly. So we just need to get these people into the market, and then the market takes care of the rest.
The president recently said in a speech that launch code and programs like it, he mentioned you specifically, should be a model for the country.
No, he didn't say programs like it.
He said, just yours. That is a
No, I
fair
was there.
point. He was talking about Tech Hire, right? Which is a program
Yes,
that
Tech Hire,
right.
yes.
All right. So I'm interested if you think an implication of your own success should be mandated tech training.
No. Don't mandate. Offer
Don't
opportunity.
mandate because people.
So
won't
here's the
do
thing.
it?
Here's the thing about
Tell me why.
mandating stuff. I mean, we were just sitting here, busting on Cuba's, communist economy, and that's mandated stuff. What we want is opportunity. Okay, what we want is multiple opportunities. So is it better to take a Coursera course or to take a WinCode course? Up to you. Do you want to go to a four-year institution? You want to study in your basement? Up to you. Like, what we want to do is we want to have good feedback so that people can make rational decisions.
But isn't a part of your argument? I mean, going back to the macroeconomic fact that there's a skill shortage,
Yeah.
going back to the fact that this is the most educated the country's ever been, and we still have enormous tech shortages in some of the densest cities in the world, doesn't this suggest that people, given all the information they need to make the decision, I should be an engineer, I should get tech skills, that lots of people aren't making those decisions, and that maybe they need a nudge in order to join your wonderful program?
No, I don't think it's a question of them not making the right decisions. I think people make the right decisions, but they're in imperfect information systems. So I'll give you the
Okay,
personal
give me an
example. Let's quit talking theory. So during the original launch code interviews, we had a lady come in who was a police dispatcher, okay? She worked in my hometown. She was a police dispatcher, which is one of the crappiest jobs in the world, right? You sit by yourself in the dark at odd hours, and people call you with the worst imaginable stories, right? And she was in her 40s, she was divorced, she had 2 kids, and she had put herself through college a second time to get a programming degree. But she picked one of the 5 institutions in my hometown that suck. So when I tested her skills, and I said, well, I can put you in one of these launch code jobs, I tested her and I was like, I'm sorry, you don't know what you're doing. Now, it wasn't that she didn't study. She actually had A's. She actually showed me her transcript. It was heartbreaking because she had made the right decisions, but she was in a situation where the information was imperfect. And any individual educational institution is always going to tell you that their placement rates are sky high. How they get those numbers probably should be vetted by the government. But I wouldn't necessarily have the government mandating particular programs because then you get predatory, education. I think, isn't the University of Phoenix, are they accredited?
I believe they are.
I think they are.
Well, I want to ask, we only have a minute and 45 seconds with just the two of us. And I want to ask about how do you get people into your program in the first place? It should be clear to thousands of people that this will help them get a job if they don't have one, and a better paying job even if they're sort of in this secretary or cashier role. But how do they find out about it in the first place? What's your strategy there?
I beg audiences to tell people. Seriously, no, we're fighting a real problem, an issue here in Miami. The airwaves are very clogged. This is a very exciting city, which means there's a lot of stuff going on, which means that, there's the Ultra Music Festival, right? It is very hard to get the word out that this works. Also, it's a little hard to believe, right? Take you from no programming skills to employably skilled in 6 months for free, which we have done. That seems a little too good to be true. It's very hard for us to get the word out. So what I do is I take invitations like this, and then I turn to the audience, and I say, all of you know somebody who should be doing this. That's the second time I've said it, right?
It's good.
Yes. Help. Tell them. Launchcode.org, and it works.
And what's next? The president mentioned you and no other companies. Are you working with Washington? Are you interested in expanding to other cities?
He didn't tell us he was going to say that. We're in a mild panic to try to scale this up at the rate that the president has outlined.
Not mandated,
Yes.
but suggested.
No, he says, look, the guy's got to do something without getting any help from Congress. And this is something that he can sort of point to. He's using the bully pulpit and saying, look, there's the moon, let's go land there. So he's pointed, and we want to go. How? I don't know. Well, we're working on that.
I don't know. It sounds like a good place to stop for now.